So, Shawn, Adrian, great to meet you. We just met a couple of minutes ago, and I invited you on to talk about your agency, Input Logic, and I want to get into all that. But you and I just started talking music, so why don't we just keep talking about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm super happy to roll into that. We just covered how we both jam. I got a weekly jam going with some friends. I was saying I feel super fortunate because all the musicians I talk to, like online like this, they're like, "Oh, I wish I had a regular jam." No one around me jams, and I just stumbled into this, but it's been the best thing for me and for making music. Like I need it every week.
I
Um,
bet, man. I mean, and I just when I was younger, like decades ago, I was playing in bands, and just the energy of like creating together and like playing loud music together, and then going out and gigging and all. It was so much fun. But I also remember like just lugging gear around and like going over to a friend's place and like tearing down amps and drum sets and stuff like that. And it's like I could do with all that. I want to be in like the comfort of my home, or like go to friends' houses where all the gear is already there,
yeah,
and just
we
like
we
make it easy.
started.
I'm too old for the hauling gear around thing.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, we started at my buddy Zach's house, and then he had a baby. And so we actually moved it to my office, like at the Input Logic space here. And my business partner is into like synths and Euro rack. So he's buying a bunch of gear, and I'm buying a bunch of gear. And we like, I mean, hopefully nobody from the tax department is listening, but we put it all under our like podcast studio, so we're like can
You're
expense all this great gear.
it's content marketing. How about that?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Hey, we made the jingle to the podcast.
There you go.
We got our own podcast. I'm going to shout it out, Internet Plumber. It So we record that every week too.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, I'm all about async, just with everything. Like how it, like podcasts are, I always say, are like the only thing that I actually do live these days. All my conversations with teammates and customers and everything, we use Clarity Flow, my app, and it's all asynchronous. But like I always think about that. Like I wish like all my musician friends were on the internet. I could just like send them like recordings or ideas or little things that I'm noodling around with, and have somebody else kind of lay a track over it.
Yeah.
Um,
So
it seems like possible. It seems very easy to do. It's just got to get it together.
I've been daydreaming of a product, like a web product maybe, or a mobile app, where you can take like all these previous recordings. So we record our jam every week, and I usually cut it up into individual songs, and you can hear a song develop, like, because everything we do is live. So you jam for 3 hours, you might get like 3 or 4 tracks in that time period that are okay. And
Yeah.
like often it's something you've played before, but maybe you play it a little differently, or somebody puts a melody over it, or maybe somebody adds a new part. And so I have all these like tracks that I've named different things that are really the same song, and it's evolved over time. And I thought, like,
Yeah.
what if I could do that async with my friends? So it's like, oh, okay, this song that I named When It's Easy, this was our first ever take of it. Zach made this guitar riff. And then this was
Yeah.
our next take, and like Sebastian put a melody on it. And like over time, you could kind of see the history of it develop. And then you could even like go in and be like, well, what if we noodle here? Or like, what if we had a bridge here? And I thought you could add
Totally.
some AI features too that would be like, this song is in the key of
Yeah.
C major, and like a bridge you could try would be like E minor, A minor, D, like it'd be
Yeah.
kind of cool.
Or even like, yeah, if there are like 3 hours of jam content, have like the AI sort of be like, this section around 45 minutes in was like a really interesting. You
Oh,
guys
that
hit
could
on
be
something.
cool.
Like there could be something there, right? I
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
like big like professional bands, like when I read about stories of how they come up with their albums and demos and stuff as they're preparing for an album, they're just sort of jamming, and then they have producers around them kind of cutting out little pieces. Um, oh man, it sounds like so much fun to get into that stuff. But
Oh yeah, it's so good.
what kind of music are you into? Like, what kind of stuff do you play?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's indie rock, I guess. Like
Hmm.
lately, as a group, we've been listening to like The Smile, and actually, I can just pull up our little chats. There's always like new stuff going on in the group chat.
So it's all just for fun. You're not like playing shows or anything like that.
No, no. In fact, when we started, like Zach, my buddy, one of our guitarists, He's like, just so you know, this is never going to leave my basement, like. And I think everyone has the same understanding that
Well,
it's just for
a
fun.
whole fun element to it. It's like we're not trying to put a set together; we're just having fun here.
I would say I'm
It's
the
great.
most task oriented and ambitious one of us, So
Yeah,
I've got like the studio set up in my office, and I'm the one recording the jams, and I'm the one cutting them up into, hey, this is a song, guys,
yeah.
But
It took me a while to break away from that kind of thing too, because when I was young, like I went to school for audio production, audio engineering,
oh
and
wow,
I thought I was going to be working in recording studios as my career. I was really into songwriting and playing in bands, and I also got into like composing music for TV and picture and stuff like that. I thought that was going to be my career before I sort of pivoted into web software
oh, it's
stuff.
so cool.
But so like that was like 20 years ago, and then that there's not a lot of money in the music industry apparently, so I sort of went into like the web design software industry. But it took me a while to break back into music as purely as a hobby for fun, because I was like, when I was younger, it was all about like, we got to write songs, we got to put a set together, got to get this band out gigging and things like that. But now it's just kind of just fun, and
Yeah.
it actually feels good again to like just play. And now my kids are learning too. I'm teaching them how to play
Oh, so
guitar.
cool.
And
Yeah.
we're like, I'm like actually jamming with my 10-year-old, which
Oh,
is
that's so
kind of
great.
mind blowing,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
My daughter is 2.5, and I'm like trying to inspire her. I'll be like, let's make up a song, baby, and we'll just like make some words to a melody and she'll dance. Or we've got like a, xylophone. And actually, I got a good story about buying a really sick ukulele. I was guitar shopping. I thought, like, what if I sell a couple of my cheap acoustic guitars and like get a nice acoustic guitar. So I was bumping into Long and McQuaid and like looking at the guitar shops, and I had my daughter with me. She was only 1.5 at this time. I'm like, do I bring her in the music store? I was like, whatever, I'll give her a cheap ukulele she can play on, like, while I'm
Yeah.
looking at guitars. So we go in and the sales guy meets me. I'm like, hey, can I just give her a cheap ukulele? He's like, oh, sure. Here's a little $50 pink thing. Like, I'm like, oh, that's great, man. If I break it, I buy it, I promise. And so she's playing with this thing, walking around the store, having a great time. I'm like, oh, this is working perfectly. She like turns and hits a really nice ukulele and knocks it off the wall with the cheap
Oh,
ukulele. It falls and the finish cracks on the bottom of the guitar.
oh,
And it's
great.
like a $400 Fender ukulele. Looks like a Telecaster, but miniature. It's got a pickup in it. All this stuff I don't need. I'm like,
Yep.
damn,
Well,
dude.
it's
I
yours
guess
now.
I just bought it. Yeah. So anyway, we
Oh, that's
call it
great.
her baby
Hey,
guitar.
she smashed her first guitar, right?
Yeah,
she's
yeah, exactly.
she's
So
a rock star for life now.
yeah.
I love it. Yeah, yeah. I got my daughter. My kids had like the toy ukulele stuff, and then got her like a small acoustic guitar, and I'm teaching her like Green Day, Nirvana songs and stuff like that, and it's so much fun to like, and she has the feel for it too. It's really fun to see her like
Awesome.
pick things up and starting to learn things by ear, and she's playing piano now too, and yeah,
it's so great.
it's so
Yeah,
great.
one of the guys I jam with, Hank, he was actually like similar to you. He was a musician prior to becoming a designer. He started doing the design like while on the road, touring, and just picking up side like design work. And then
Yeah.
when he had kids, he's like, okay, I don't want to tour anymore. I'm going to be a designer. So that's what he does. But he's got a son who is 6, I want to say. And he's just got him. He can just keep a straight beat now on the drum kit. So he's like, I can jam with my son. He can keep a
That's
beat,
great. That's
Yeah.
great. I know so many professionals in our industry, myself included, who like the first like amateur website that you ever built was for your band.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just
Yeah,
like
I was
a
doing
running
like
thing.
gig flyers as my first like paid design work, because like, oh, I can go see this show for free if I make the flyers. So.
Totally. I love it. All right, let's pivot into actual stuff. I was really excited to kind of connect with you. I'm going on a string of episodes here talking to people who run agencies, and I'm especially interested in like software product development agencies. And everything. I've just been clicking around the Input Logic website,
Haha.
just having like literally just having so much fun like clicking around your website. It's such a it's so well designed, and it's also like actually engaging as an agency, like kind of portfolio site.
Oh, thanks so
Um,
much, man.
that's at inputlogic.ca. And so I'm coming at this conversation like I sort of just want to like pick your brain and get a lay of the land on what it looks like to run an agency at your level and this type of service. Looks like you guys do a lot of different things. Um, I've done web design stuff in the past. I've done a few SaaS product companies, and now I'm sort of getting back into client services, kind of opening up a small consultancy, kind of small dev studio, really just getting off the ground here in 2024.
Oh, awesome.
And I'm like, I've been like years away from doing client services, and I'm sort of like just getting back into it, and I'm kind of excited about it, kind of learning about it, relearning a lot of these things that I learned earlier in my career. So that's why I'm excited to talk to you. I mean,
Totally.
why don't we just start there? Like we'll go back in time a little bit later, but today here in 2024, what's happening at Input Logic? How do you describe what you guys are? What do you do? What are you focused on right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's 22 of us now. Like the team has grown over the last few years. Really since 2020, like the post-COVID thing, we added about like half our teammates since then. So things grew kind of rapidly at that point. But we run maybe 7 to 8 projects simultaneously. Mostly they're for startups in
Mm-hmm.
the 0 to 1 sort of MVP space. We like to say we build polished MVPs. So we're not going to be like the prototype that you share with investors to like raise your seed round. We're going to be sort of like you have your seed round and you're going to market, and you want like a more polished MVP out there.
Yeah,
Um,
I never really liked that term MVP.
yeah, yeah.
I never use it with my own products. I always think about it like this is V1. Like we're going to
Hmm.
build on this, but these days between design and development and tooling and everything, like V1 should have a level of quality that's not minimal, you know.
Yeah, I mean it's table stakes these days. And my background is design, so I've never been able to put out the shitty
Mm-hmm.
weekend version, you know.
Yep.
Fortunately, like I'm gonna throw Gavin under the bus. My business partner Gavin is a developer, and through and through. So like a couple of our products have started that way, where he hacked on something on the weekend. So
Mm-hmm.
Postachio was this blogging platform we made back in like 2012. It was an Evernote powered blogging platform. Sort of, there's this thing right now called super.so, which like allows you to make a website from Notion. It would
Oh
be
yeah, I
like
saw that. Yeah.
that, but for Evernote, you know?
Okay.
And we won Evernote's Dev Cup in 2013. I got a gold trophy here that MC Hammer gave me.
Oh
And
wow.
we raised some money for that and like did the Silicon Valley thing. Spent a
Mm.
month at Evernote's office in San Francisco, and we really focused on that as a startup for like 3 years. Sorry, I completely pivoted into like some backstory there,
No, I mean
but
you're covering like three or four of the questions that I had for you. So okay, so it sounds like yeah, there've been multiple pivots. Some of your own products, you're doing stuff for clients. One of the questions that I did have for you, it sounds like you answered it, was so most of the work that you do with clients are for like startups selling their own products. These are like V1s or quote unquote
yeah,
MVPs
yeah.
if you want. But like I was wondering, like, do you have engagements where you're just designing like a I don't know, like an internal software solution for a company, or is it
Yeah, we
always like
got
a product that's for market?
usually it's a product that's for market. We like to think about like the user experience and the business model a bit, you know, like how are
Mm-hmm.
people going to buy this and the onboarding and upsells and that kind of thing. Some of it is actually, are we working on any internal tooling right now? Um, no, it's all go to market stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We do like some enterprise stuff. So, for example, we did this big project with the U.S. Department of Trade. Um, it was like a privacy certification software
Mm-hmm.
where essentially developing nations don't have the same like privacy standards for corporations and things. If like you've probably filled out these really boring like privacy surveys to get certified for some clients. So anyway,
Yeah.
we built this software that was just like a really complicated survey system that government states could adopt to run their corporations through. It was like a certification software. So something like that, like it wasn't really like to go to market, but it was just like, can we make boring government software kind of sexy, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, and like boring government software must be like a beast when it comes to like accessibility. Like it has to work for like such a high volume, like a wide part of the population, you know?
Yeah. And this was neat because it was meant to be open source. So like we put it on GitHub and it has the really like great name of data privacy software, you know, and we're like, what do you guys want to call this? Oh no, data privacy certification software. That's it. It's really accessible, needs to be installed by third-party nation states, you know, so like some tech in some government department is going to be standing this thing up on their own and deploying it. So,
but for the most part, it's like startups with some seed funding, and they have a concept of what they want to bring to market, and they come to Input Logic to. So actually, I'm kind of wondering about that. Like how it seems, just from the impression, like looking at your website and your work, it seems like you're kind of spanning everything from concept and strategy to design to development, launch, and then I even see stuff about like growth strategy and kind of go to market stuff. Like how much of this stuff is Input Logic kind of involved in?
Yeah, so I mean, we do it all. The degree to which we do it well, I'm sure, is debatable. But I like to say,
we're like the core pieces that like you're known for.
I like to say from the napkin to the app store. So Gavin and I, we started this thing so that we could build and launch products. Our mission statement says to launch beautifully crafted products. A mentor of mine once said, like, Shawn, you gotta figure out where on the strategy and execution scale you want to be. He said the bigger money's on the strategy side. Obviously, like if you're way far on the execution side, you're like a code monkey. You're getting paid by the hour, you know? But really, like we like to play on the execution side. So I'd say on that barbell, we're like maybe at the 40 to 50% mark toward the strategy side. So there's very few people on my team that are like strategizing what the future looks like for our customers. I would be one of them, you know? So yeah, I guess we're definitely more on the execution side, but we hire people who also have a passion for launching beautifully crafted products and learning new things, staying curious. So we're constantly like playing with new types of products. I want to say like we have our own AI startup right now. It's called Stilo.ai. It's a AI assisted journaling tool.
I want to get into that. And actually just the question there is like, what is the mix of, so you mentioned like you're running around 8 projects simultaneously. What's the mix of these are client engagements versus like your own products?
Yeah, so that would be all client engagements. And then what we use is like we use bench time for our own products. And like full disclosure,
like 80-20 kind of thing. Like
I wouldn't even call it that. Like our own stuff gets just pushed to the back burner all the time. Actually, like Stilo is a major achievement for us because the last time we had a big client product, a big internal project was 2000 and like I think we sold Postachio, the blogging thing, in 2015, and we literally hadn't launched like done a real launch for one of our own internal projects since, you know. We just got so caught up in client work and, refining our product management processes and, increasing our design capacity and just doing all the stuff that like growing an agency involves. But then coming into this, like toward the end of last year, we're just like, you know what, we're a product company without a product. Like we need a product in the marketplace. And Gavin and I had been like, we've noodled on a ton of stuff over the years. Like we probably make up a new side project every 6 months, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But we just took one of those side projects, this AI journaling thing, and we're like, let's make this a real thing, open it up to the public.
Yeah.
We're not even charging money for it yet. Like we'll roll out some payment.
It looks super cool. So it's my quick read on it is it's an AI journaling app. It's super private, right? I can write. I guess it's going to give me some like AI prompts, some wisdom. Looks really cool. I like it. I'm just sort of like scrolling through the really beautiful landing page for it too. Oh, Shawn, I think you froze up. Did I lose you? Hey, Shawn. Hopefully we'll get Shawn right back on the call here. Hey, he's back.
Man, that's so embarrassing. I like literally just kicked my power bar out of the wall. I leaned
Oh,
back and like unplugged myself just completely.
oh wow! I got your email. I was like, did this whole building lose power or something? Or like,
Yeah, no,
crazy.
it was all me. Yeah.
Right on. So I don't know where we got cut off, but I was kind of looking through Stilo .ai, which looks beautiful. So what I'm curious about is, you mentioned like you're a product company without your own product, and now with the design and build and launch of Stilo, which as we record this, it's in beta. Um, it looks like you're going like full on like putting this out in the market, but is your goal like sort of just to have a product that as a product agency to keep your chops sharp on your own stuff, maybe something to showcase, or is it like an active effort to transition more to products like product revenue to balance out client revenue, that sort of thing?
Yeah. This is actually like a good segue to talk about the roots of the company.
Mm-hmm.
So that the answer to that question specifically is we'd rather be a product company that occasionally does client work
Mm-hmm.
than a services company that occasionally makes their own products. And right now, that's where we're at. We're a services company that occasionally makes our own products. But when we started the company, Gavin and I were both freelancing. We were doing a bunch of like WordPress, Magento, WooCommerce stuff, just being like, I called myself a web designer. And
Mm-hmm.
we started the company and we decided, like, Gavin got laid off from his job. I was already freelancing. And I was like, hey, man, come work together. Like, let's do something.
Yeah.
And
Around what year was this?
this would have been 2008 or 9, I want to say.
Okay. Cool.
2009. Yeah. So we started working together 2009. We were still just kind of freelancing, taking on clients together. We're doing a bunch of like, just your average boring WordPress sites. I mean, custom stuff, but a lot of PHP. And we decided, like, what would be rad is if we could just like fire all our clients and be a product company. And so we made this thing called Quote Robot. Um, Pro- Quote Robot was a proposal writing tool for designers, proposal writing and invoicing. And we actually had like some success with it. It made enough money to pay one of us a full-time salary. And so we
I
had a
think I
SaaS.
actually remember that product in the market, and literally around the same time, I did a WordPress theme for writing proposals because I was doing the same exact type of freelance work, WordPress sites for clients, and yeah, I remember like Quote Robot was out there, Bid Sketch was out there, and then
Yeah,
I had
yeah,
this little WordPress theme for proposals, and
yeah.
um, yeah, fun
That was an
times.
interesting time for me. It was my first app that I put out in the world. I'd
And
never
that
heard.
that was like a SaaS
It
app,
was a
SaaS
SaaS
product.
product, yeah. And
Huh.
this was before Stripe. Like we used this payment processor called Beanstream, and when
Hmm.
Stripe came out, I was like, "Oh my god, this is the best thing ever!"
Right.
And the yeah, it made enough money to pay one person. So like in a way, before like I sort of did that. Like Gavin and I hadn't gone into business together yet, so I did it with another guy, John, and then bought him out and went into business with Gavin. So kind of in those early days, I had almost achieved the like SaaS dream where like I had a thing generating enough money while I slept to pay my bills, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and so I went into business with Gavin and we were like, wow, okay, so like maybe we don't need to freelance anymore. We can tell our clients that we're not going to do WordPress sites anymore. And so we just doubled down on Quote Robot. And then while we were working on Quote Robot, we created Postachio. And really, like what made us make Postachio is we were writing help documentation for Quote Robot. And
Mm.
we just didn't want to roll a whole nother website for like help documentation. And we thought, why don't we just write it all in Evernote and just like publish what's in Evernote? So that was sort of like the beginning of Postachio. It was sort of in the like Posterous era where people were like microblogging and things.
Right. Yeah.
And then really like two things
And so
undid
like all of
our
a sudden you're developing into like a multi-product little studio agency
exactly,
or a
yeah.
company.
And that's what attracted like our investors initially. We actually went down to this thing called Startup Riot in Seattle and pitched Quote Robot, and
Hmm.
I had never heard the term startup before that. Like I didn't know anything about fundraising or even running a company really. The But some investors wanted to put some money in, and we were like, oh, like people will pay us just to work on our own stuff and we don't have to give that money back. Like um yeah, I mean, we learned about the strings later on, but the
So
any
they were interested in Quote Robot specifically or like your product company in general.
yeah, so when we got our first offer for investment, we said, look, these are our stipulations. We want to build whatever we want. We don't want to just have to focus on Quote Robot. um, we want to work from wherever we want. Remote work wasn't such a thing at the time,
Hmm.
but it was for us because we were both freelancers. Um, and the and it also like said we had no plans for an exit. We don't know where this is going, you know.
Hmm.
And the investor, to his credit, the first guy, he said, "Look, I just want a piece of whatever you guys do. You know, like I'll put in some cash. We can incorporate this thing, and I just want to come along for the ride." And actually, after we sold Postachio, we had what's called a soft landing. We had raised about $500,000. We sold Postachio. We ended up paying back a lot of the investors. We actually kept that guy on, so he's the only investor in Input Logic today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And so anyway, we had Quote Robot in the market. We had Postachio. Medium came along, started to like eat Postachio's lunch as far as blogging goes.
Hmm.
And then Bid Sketch, like, well, what's that guy's name? Rowan Gammas. It's like
Yeah, Ruben.
Ruben
Yep.
Gammas. It's still in my head because he just destroyed me on
I
content
know.
marketing. Bid Sketch was crushing it.
He's so good, especially with SEO stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So Bid Sketch really just like ate our lunch, and then Panda Dog came out,
Hmm.
um, and then we were so focused on Postachio at the time that Quote Robot was just languishing, you know.
Hmm.
So and then FreshBooks also came out and like started like cannibalizing the invoicing side of that. So we sort of like
Oh,
let
okay.
Quote Robot just go to zero, and then we sold Postachio. This was in 2000 and I want to say 17, maybe 2016, 17.
Okay.
And at that time, we're like, well, what do we do? So we thought like, well, why don't we go back to doing client work? We know how to do that. But let's just like not do marketing sites. Let's just build startups, you know? So
Yeah.
we actually reached out to
This
Andrew
is where
Wilk.
I'm actually like especially interested because I feel like there's sort of a parallel with where I'm at this year. I'm coming off of like the last couple of years of just focusing on products, and now I'm just getting into like I love to design and build products as well, and I would love to do it with clients. I started doing that this year with some. I'm curious to know. Okay, so you sort of like exit Pistachio and Quote Robot. You're talking about putting together like a product dev agency, going back into client work. What are your first steps in terms of like conceptualizing that, getting some very first clients in the door? What does that look like?
Yeah, so we made two calls. One was to like our investor. I was just like, hey, do you have any startups we could work with? He did refer us to another one called Contractually that he hadn't invested in. It was in sort of like the enterprise procurement space. We did like about a year-long design contract with them. And then we reached out to Andrew Wilkinson at Tiny.
Oh yeah.
We're in Nanaimo. He's in Victoria. We'd always known about each other, like just being an hour apart on the island, not too many design agencies on the island. So we had lunch with him and Chris, and Andrew, I believe, was he at MetaLab or just, I think Tim might have been running it. Anyway, so and like Tiny was like barely a thing at that point. It was still mostly MetaLab. And
Yeah, and MetaLab is Andrew Wilkins' like design agency.
yeah,
like
his product studio. Yeah, I
product
mean they're
studio.
huge now, though. I think they're like
Yep.
120 people.
Right.
So so we had lunch with him, and he had just written this blog post about Slack, how they had helped Slack make their MVP. And he was getting, it was on Medium. He wrote this blog post, and he said he was getting 60 new leads a day coming to MetaLab for design work. And I was
Wow.
like, dude, send some of that our way. Like, so really, like, for the first 2-3 years after we made that pivot, we were getting most of our design referrals from MetaLab. And the way the referral contract worked was we'd have to give them, I think in early days it was 15% of the gross project for the first year. So the second year and thereafter, it was our client. And they were just sending us all the stuff that, I mean, it's expensive to work with MetaLab. So it was all the
like,
stuff below
even
a
the
certain
overflow
dollar threshold.
stuff is still
Yeah. So, I mean, really, I'm thankful to this day to Andrew for helping us build what we have going on. We haven't joined the Tiny family. We're having too much fun, like building our own thing right now. But
it's super cool.
I always have that in the back of my mind. Maybe one day I'll call him up.
So it sounds like then, and maybe continuing through today, most of the clients are, as you said, like they're startups. They're recently received some like early funding. What's sort of interesting to me, and I mean, I've seen this pattern a lot with like product agencies, but I still always wonder about like startups who make the decision to like outsource the design and development of their MVP or V1 product to an agency like yours, or maybe outsource is the wrong word because it probably operates more like a partnership, but you're not like part of their like. What's interesting to me are these like tech startups who don't really have an in-house tech team.
Yeah.
You know, but it seems like there's a lot of them.
I mean, often it'll be maybe a founder and a technical co-founder who start together, and they have some money, but they haven't hired a team. It can take 6 months to hire a CTO, you know?
Yeah.
And usually they can get pretty far on their own. So like my personal types of founders to work with are like the highly technical, like designers and developers who are building as well.
I see what you're saying. So like the founders or the founder is probably technical to a certain extent, but
exactly.
It's building out the team, which is slow and difficult. And when you're a startup, you have to move fast. So,
and like we've always been, so like personally, my background is design. I lead with design, and like I'm a front end developer as well. So just a high level of design polish. So often we get startups who like maybe they built a prototype, the founders are technical, but they don't have those design chops, you know, or it'll be like a designer and they can't code it. So that's kind of the two that we see. And then part of the issue with that model for us business wise is that everybody graduates from input at some point. So even our longest running contracts, say they go 2-3 years, eventually they have me interviewing a CTO for them. They're like, hey, Shawn, what do you think about this person? You mind just like chatting with them, see if they can take over here? And
yeah, that was going to be another big question of mine, is like, what happens after the engagement ends? Well, like, but even before we get there, I'd like to know a little bit more about the typical project. Like what?
Yeah, I'll run through what's on the docket at the moment. Like I'm going to
Yeah,
pull up my resource
like
management
how
software.
many months is a typical, from start to finish? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. Let me pull up my Float. I use this awesome app, float.com, for like resource management. I hate calling humans resources. I don't even like the term human resources, but that's what it is. It's a resource management software.
I remember that was one of my little shiny object ideas, like over 10 years ago, when I had a little web design agency and assembling teams of freelancers and who's available. I was like, there should be an app for this. I should build that. And then never did.
I mean, there is.
I guess Float did, but
yeah, Float is great.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do we got going on this week? We're working on something called Coffee and Contracts. This is a founder named Haley. She's out of Florida. She's got like some design chops, but she's not technical. And I think she was either like a realtor or working in real estate, because this is a tool for realtors. It's actually like a pretty smart idea. It just gives realtors social media content ideas. She's a new client. We're just in the design phase. We're taking over the app that she already has and sort of taking it to the next level. And
Very cool.
She's great because she is funding it out of revenue. You know what? I don't know if I actually had that conversation with her, but I know what the business is doing, and I'm making that assumption that it's being funded out of revenue. So I really like that type of engagement. Like that's like so ideal for me. Working directly with the founder, they're funding it out of revenue on a SaaS product, and they got a vision and a lot of fun stuff to build in the future.
Like they have customers, they know what users need and want and are actually doing in their app. Yeah.
And the reason I love that is because you can make a change and immediately see the impact on the customers and revenue. You're not like imagining what the future will look like. You're like, okay, we're making changes and we're navigating with the tools we have,
Yeah. Do you have other clients that are super early, like quote unquote pre-revenue, like just an idea, like doing the market customer research? Are you helping them through that process, like helping them like decide like what is the problem that we're solving here? And
yeah. So we run some like UX sprints where we'll do like a competitive analysis. Okay, you want to play in this space. This is the problem space. These are the other companies in this space. How do you align with them? What features do you want to have that they don't have, and vice versa? What are the personas that you want to target? That kind of thing. We do some of that. Like I said, we're like more on the execution side than the strategy side. So we're like, well, let's build a landing page and see if anyone clicks this button,
Right. But it sounds like more likely, like by the time they come to you, they're like ready to go with a direction on the product.
Yeah. And actually one of my, I have a story about getting a really great opportunity to pitch a regional bank. Like I went and I spoke at a conference about mashing up APIs and how you can make new products that way, And this executive from a local regional bank came up to me afterward. He's like, man, you got to meet my team. Let's have lunch. I think there's stuff we could do together. And I go and I have this lunch with my business partner and we sit around and we chat, and it was a great lunch. But at the end, I'm like, okay, what do you guys want to build? Let's do it. And they're like, oh, well, we were kind of hoping like you would have some next steps here, like what, and it made me realize like, damn, like we really don't have a strategy offering we could sell a client like this. So that's probably a gap in what we do. Like I should have said, okay, well, I'll sign you up for this 4-week market analysis strategy engagement.
That's actually been a big, you're right, because like that's actually been a big question mark on my mind right now. Like I have a lot of contacts in the SaaS industries, SaaS circles. So I can reach out to other SaaS companies who are trying to launch new products or new features and things like that. And that's where my early clients have come from. But in theory, I would like to extend my consultancy into these businesses and companies that need software solutions, but maybe they don't even know what's possible, or they don't know the questions to ask. They don't know what to look for. Um, so it sounds like you have mostly clients who are like in the startup space and they know what they're building, but like, do you ever come across clients, or do you have any sort of like outreach to companies that could use what Input Logic does, but maybe more like educating them on
Yeah,
like
I
what's
think I
possible?
think that's like future input. It's not
Hmm.
where we are today, as outlined by the story I just told, where we like lost this great opportunity. Just it's
Right.
been 3 years now, and like I have them in my CRM. I occasionally send an email. Let's build
Hmm.
something.
Yeah,
It didn't
anything you
work
want to
out.
build?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But
Hmm.
the yeah, no, that's the next step. So now that we're like over 20 people, um, I mean, we built this thing just based on like our networks, people,
Hmm.
oh yeah, you should work with Shawn and Gavin or Shawn and Gavin's team or Input. The Now that like there's a few more mouths to feed, I'm thinking more like how do I make work out of nothing? Like how do I
Yeah.
reach out to companies that could use us but don't need it?
I
Um,
do want to get into the team a little bit and how it grew from just you and Gavin into your team of, you said 20 something people. Before we get there, I want to also ask a little bit more about like the mechanics of a typical project. Whatever you're willing to share. I mean, um, how do you go about billing, and what does that look like? And even like the sales process too, like from a new contact to a proposal to where does it even start? Is there like a what are we building here type of mini project that leads into a bigger project? Anyway, there's lots of questions
yeah,
kind of wrapped in there, but
I think I
um,
can answer that and answer a previous question. At the same time, I was just going to run through our docket of work in Float, and I'll give you
yeah,
like the Cole's notes on each project that we got going on right now. That might
please,
be kind
yeah,
of interesting. I don't know if any other agencies like do that. So
that'd be
the
awesome. Yeah.
I'll skip any that we're under NDA not to talk about, I suppose. But okay, so I mentioned coffee and contracts. Um, the next one is Sigma Assessments. They're kind of a ongoing project for us. It's been going 2 years now. Um, this PhD guy who rented a desk in our co-working space was doing some contract work for them, and they build psychological assessments for police and military and healthcare uses. So
Hmm.
essentially, like you go to join the military, they run you through a psych eval to make sure you're not going to bad stuff, and
Wow.
they provide this assessment software. So we're kind of making it all cloud based, and that came to us just through like a referral in our network. A guy at the co-working space was doing some work. He's like, hey, these guys want to make a new version, you want to bid on it? So we got that. um, Next one on my list here is called Permission Slip. This is consumer reports. This came to us through MetaLab. um, I guess Consumer Reports reached out to MetaLab. They wanted to do a side project called Permission Slip, which is like they say swipe right on big tech. Like they'll essentially allow you to serve a cease and desist of Facebook, like delete my data.
Hmm.
So this came out of the Consumer Reports Digital Lab. MetaLab sent us this one as a referral, like, hey, they don't have the budget to work with us. You guys want to bid on it? So we bid on that and won.
Huh.
Um,
By the way, are you so like are you personally involved in most of this like contacts and sales, or are there other folks on the team who are kind of
yeah, it's me. It's
like nurturing
me.
these relationships and things like that?
Yeah, it's me who's doing it, and then I've got Elise, who is her former role was client partner. Now it's marketing manager and
Hmm.
operations. We're like, you do a bit of everything.
Right.
But so Elise and I are really like having these intro calls. Our sales process is 2 steps. There's like an intro call. We shoot you over a deck. You get to know about the team and how we work and our pricing and everything. I like to provide a ballpark estimate after a single email. Um, and just because I want to be the guy who provides the most value right up front.
Yeah.
So
And when you
some,
say an estimate, are you talking about like, okay, here's the high level concept for what you want to build as a product, and you're probably looking at
yeah, a
X
range, yeah.
number in the net over a period of time? Like,
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what I'll say after an email. And then we'll usually do like an intro call and a technical scoping call. And then we'll provide like a really detailed estimate.
hmm,
We'll get down to like a potential database model, potential sitemap. And we do that really quickly. We try and turn those around in 24 to 48 hours after a technical scoping call.
okay.
Um, and I tell people, like, you're free to take this to another agency and just have them build it, you know? So I'm
Yeah,
just
I've
trying
always
to
wondered
like,
about that, where it's like, how much work do you put in up front on that like upfront like kind of planning and scoping? It sounds like it's a lighter version of that you can do in about a day. Um,
yeah. Yeah. So I try and put in a little bit of work up front, but I don't want to put in more than like a few hours, if that makes sense. You know,
sure.
we're not doing any like design work in that. It's more like just relying on our existing expertise applied to the problem they have as we understand it from a couple of calls, um, and then giving them a range of weeks that it'll take to build the thing.
So yeah, I was going to ask you. So how do you structure the quotes? Is it like a total number of hours? Is it like we're going
Yeah,
to
so
assign a
our
designer, a
minimum
developer,
billing
and
increment for new clients is a weekly billing increment.
uh-huh.
So we say, like, based on what we've discussed, you're going to need X weeks of design, X weeks of front end, X weeks of back end, X weeks of maintenance post launch. Um,
And like
and
each one of those roles kind of has its own weekly rate.
So we actually have a flat rate billing system. Like, everything is 6K a week right now.
Okay.
So that works out to 150 an hour. It's like kind of a bargain compared to, say, MetaLab, who's 250 an hour, but it's a little more expensive than your local web design shop.
Hmm.
So
And when
the
and so like and this is interesting because I've been thinking through like different models for myself as well. I'll also sort of defaulting to the weekly model. But when you say like 6K, is that like whoever is required, whoever is needed for that phase of the project, or like if you're comparing two different projects, one is kind of a lightweight, relatively simpler product that kind of just needs a designer and a developer, whereas this one might need two designers, a front end and a back end
Yeah, so
developer,
that's
and like,
that's 6K is our sprint rate, and it's per sprint. So, and a sprint for us is like a PM managing a full-time resource. So
okay,
if you're running two sprints, then that's 6K times two.
got it. Okay, very cool.
Yeah, it works out well. And the reason we've kept it flat is because it's easier to explain. Like, it's easier for clients to conceptualize. It's like, okay, so if I double up the designer, they know they're doubling up the rate, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I like breaking it down to weeks too, because as I've been doing some of these proposals where it's like, okay, like I think that we can build and ship V1 in about 5 months on this thing. But if the scope changes or if things extend, like we can go a few extra weeks, and that's the cost per week if we go over.
Totally, yeah. And it is really important for us that the billing is time and materials. Sometimes it's a hard sell to customers because they're like, well, you're incentivized to drag it on longer, you know? But we're actually like, we prefer shorter engagements in the sense that you can have a win, celebrate, move on to the next engagement together.
Hmm.
So generally, we'll try and like pare a thing down to its minimum viable product, or like the smallest engagement we can start with to have a good win. Sometimes that's just the design phase. I find the design team just really knocks it out of the park, and the client's super excited to build all kinds of stuff after the design.
Right.
Um,
How
the
how do you like? What is the discussion in terms of like? Okay, so what happens after we finish V1? Like, is there like an ongoing retainer option? What's the handoff look like?
Yeah, so I call it a maintenance agreement, even though like apps don't really need maintenance per se.
Hmm.
But usually I'll say, like, look, if building the thing is a full time thing for 6 months, after it's launched, you may only need us 1 week a month. You know,
Hmm.
we ask people to collect all their customer support issues into like a week worth of tickets we can build. You know,
Hmm.
um, so, and just to like wait until they have a week worth of things to do so we can do that weekly engagement model.
Yep.
But like for existing clients, we will do day rate work, you know, like, so say
Hmm.
we launched your product 3 months ago and there's just like, I don't know, a security patch
Like
came
a
out
quick
that
thing. Yep.
has some issue. We'll like just put somebody on it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. let's kind of like go back in the story a little bit again. And so you were talking about how it was you and your co-founder Gavin, is his name?
Yeah.
Um, how do you go from just two of you to even just a third or fourth person? Like what were sort of the milestones that started to grow the team?
Yeah, I mean, so the first guy we hired was Adrian at that point, and he's still with us today. He was an intern. Like, we're just like, let's get an intern in here, and he can help do some of these tasks. Um, and so that was it. We hired a developer intern, fresh out of computer science at the local university here, and yeah, paid him salary just monthly. One of our investors early on told us like it's always better to own somebody's whole brain than half their brain. So if you can get them full time, get them. Nowadays things are a little bit different, like with remote teams and async, and like my perspective on that has changed a little bit. But generally, everybody who works for Input is a full time salaried employee. So yeah, we put them on salary. Go ahead.
And so just like the volume of projects coming in, it's like we just literally don't like we have enough that we can keep someone busy rather than having to turn projects away or schedule them out for later in the year. It's like it makes sense to bring on more people.
Totally, yeah. We've always hired, I want to say late. I was told to hire before you need to hire, and I just have never been able to follow that advice. We always hire when everybody is just flat out busy, including ourselves. It's like, oh God, we can't keep up. Like, let's bring another person in. I would love to change that.
I kind of like leaning more conservatively on that too. Just like not letting the headcount get sort of out of control. And like if my view on it, especially in client services, I had a previous service agency where we were doing content marketing as a service. And very early on, when it was a very small team, like my thing was, I'll just pause sales. We'll just have a waiting list until we grow the team, and that just always seemed like a little bit like saner to me.
Totally. And that has always been our approach. We've always tried to be conservative. Full disclosure, like we just went through a round of layoffs. We let 4 people go in January. Super sucky. Like always sucks to fire your friends, It was a bit of a humbling moment for us because we've always sort of preached that conservative growth. Don't grow too fast. Take it easy. We're not a startup. We're not burning through a seed round,
Right.
We're like trying to build a company that'll last. But I don't know if we got like caught up in the exuberance of the post-COVID situation, or I don't know, just we had the work. It seemed like we needed, you know what it was? This is what I'm telling myself. We were trying to move up market a bit, wanted to provide a better service overall. So we like hired more product managers, for example. We made a head of design role. We made a head of growth role. We like I think that we put too many people in managerial roles rather than individual contributors. And then when the market tightened up in the middle of last year, we didn't make changes quick enough. And just like it turned out that coming into the new year, we needed to reduce expenses. Otherwise, we weren't going to be profitable. So, yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I could see how like some of the highest caliber designers, developers are also like kind of self-managing, or they work really well together in small teams. They don't really necessarily need the extra management layer to do great work. Yeah.
This is a mystery to me. Like we've got 2 PMs on the team right now. We're running 8 or 9 projects at a time. So that means that each PM is doing 4 projects minimum.
That even seems like a lot. Like for each
seems
one.
like a lot, to keep in your head. So we've been refactoring our PM processes to be like what we call PM light, so just less touch points, less ownership from the PM, if that makes sense. Trying to like let that ownership trickle onto the devs. Our devs take a high level of ownership anyway. Like most of them are seniors and like really the PM is like reduces friction on the project instead of like most of our seniors could PM the project themselves, but they don't want to be making Jira tickets. They want to be writing code, right? So
Right.
the but I really can't speak to this because I can speak to it from the point of like failing to do it right for years and like not being sure what right looks like. But we're definitely constantly in a transition. Like our PM processes are evolving all the time. Every quarter, we're like, let's try this.
Yeah, but I think that sounds like it's the norm for this type of business anyway. You're always going to
Maybe,
be
yeah.
evolving, and I would say failure is a strong word considering how like just the longevity of this company and everything that I can see on the front end. Just super impressive. I'm curious to know, like, what does your role look like these days? I mean, I know you can pull up the list of projects and float right now, but like, other than like you reading off of that list, like how closely involved are you with the clients, with the team, with the actual work that's happening, like creatively
Yeah.
delivering? Yeah.
So this is one of those things that as I've developed processes to that everybody understands, I've become less necessary, but I can be as involved as I want to, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But it has created some like weird insecurity around how necessary I am, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Um,
What
so
exactly do you do here every day?
exactly. You know, it's like, okay, I do intro calls, client intro calls. Okay, so I'm primarily handling new leads that come in, or I'm seeking them out. I'm sending emails. Um, I'm just emailing up buddies from my 20-year career. Hey, what are you up to these days? Anything we could help with? You know, so I
And
do a lot of
that's
that.
actually still like a regular task for you, even though you have like a lot of like organic referrals coming your way over
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Like
I
you're
still
still
send a
out there,
few
like
emails a
yeah.
week. I'm trying to. The problem is like I can never stop because the team keeps growing and there's more people to get work for. So like
Hmm.
it's like a, yeah. We always seem to need more work. You know. Um,
Any tips for that sort of thing? I mean, other than just reaching out to folks you know to say like, hey, we're available for projects. Like anything else to sort of like you guys do a great job on your website of like creating these beautiful case studies for every project. Do you do you have a process for okay, you finish a project successfully, maybe get that client to recommend you to someone else? Like how do you think about like generating more referral business?
I do ask for referrals. I say, hey, like anyone else in your network, do you think you'd benefit from working with us? Like if this was a good experience, you know, do you
Mm-hmm.
mind making a referral? So that is one way. Um, we look at products as marketing too, like Stilo,
Mm-hmm.
our own thing. The more we talk about that, the more it'll draw attention to input as an agency, theoretically, I guess. And yeah, I don't know, this thing has kind of grown organically. Like um, a lot of it is inbound. Most of our work is referrals from existing clients, or people will leave a company, get a new role at a new company, and then reach out again. Like, hey,
Yeah.
this new company also needs this type of stuff. Um,
You
yeah,
know, lately I'm sort of have this like working opinion, and this was mostly about products, but I think the same applies to services. That like most quote unquote marketing like doesn't really work, and it's mostly word of mouth that always works best.
that's
And
what
that
I've seen for
you know, like
myself.
I just think that's the case definitely for client services where it's like great experience working together. They refer you to other clients come to you. But the same is true for products too. I mean, the best products, people are talking about it because they're excited to recommend it, and that goes to the quality of the product and the quality of the service and the client
Totally.
relationship. And the better the work is, the better the product or the service is, the more that word of mouth is going to just sort of happen.
That
Um,
that's how I've seen it in my experience. But like part of my brain just says that's just because you're a bad marketer, Shawn. Like, so we tried to implement some funnels on our website. So if you notice in the footer of our website, like you can reach out and it'll get you to fill out a little lead gen form, ask you your budget and what you want us to build. And we've made some landing pages that like send people to that form. And we've had leads fill it out. But like a part of me is suspicious that the type of people who hire an agency like ours are not searching Google for an agency like ours and filling out a lead gen form, because like the conversion from people who fill out that form to like, spend $100K on an app with us is so low. Like it might as well be non-existent.
I would guess that like maybe the form itself might not have such a high conversion rate, but the work that you're showing on your site. And I would encourage anyone listening to this to just go click around on inputlogic.ca. I love what you guys do with the cursor, how it changes as you hover over things. I could tell you put a lot of work into the presentation and the copywriting and the interactivity. So like, if they're having a conversation with you, they might not fill out your form, but they're definitely going to be checking out this work. And this probably gets you into like the top 3 of contention for a project, right?
Yeah. I mean, I assume by the time somebody is checking out our website, they've been referred to us via some word of mouth and they're like fairly likely to engage. We've had a few situations where like we're pitching against other agencies and lost, MetaLab included. They're like frenemies these days. I lost 2 really great projects to them last year. And I'm like, you've sent me so much work, but damn, I wanted those ones,
Right.
So yeah, it's, I think it's just I haven't cracked cold outreach yet. Speaking at a conference and having people come up and chat with you after seems to be effective. Having existing clients refer you to other people seems to be effective. But yeah, I haven't figured out, like, I'd love to work with this banking organization based in Calgary called Neo. They just have like this sick little black debit card, or like Visa debit. It's actually a MasterCard. And a cool points system and a really great interface. And I'm like, man, that's like some cool fintech. I want to work with that company. Right. I have not figured out how to like do a cold outreach into that company and have somebody like hire us, So It's like, I've been at this more than 20 years and I still have not figured that out. Like, hey, we'd like to work with NASA. How do we get somebody at NASA to call us?
Yeah.
We actually did get to work with NASA 2 years ago.
Yeah, so that kind of thing is going to be really difficult because it's like it's a timing aspect of it too. I mean, I've played with like cold outreach for product stuff, for like SaaS products, but it's like I know exactly who the customer is for that, and they probably have a need for that product in general.
Totally.
But a big project with a design dev studio, it's like you kind of have to catch them at a time when they're already thinking about a potential big need,
one thing that's worked, this is getting a little saturated, but like VC firms and angel investors have a lot of deal flow into startups. So anytime an investor has like seen us work with one of their portfolio companies and we've done a great job, enough to like make referrals, those usually pan out. Like those are really warm leads. If investors are like, oh, they help this portfolio company, like you guys should chat with them, so that's pretty good lead gen for an agency like ours.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, I mean, I'm excited to kind of keep following along with what you guys are doing, especially with the rollout of Stilo.ai this year, getting into your own product launch here.
I love that thing, man. It's like robot therapy. I don't know if you played with it at all, but
no, I was just reading the landing page. I kind of want to play with it. It looks really cool.
I talk to this thing almost every day. Not talk, I type to it. But I mean, you just bare your soul and it reflects with you. Like it's
super cool.
It's so handy. I totally think that there is. It's the thing I'm most excited about right now.
So you sort of like fine tune the language models to work for like a like a journaling, like kind of reflection context sort of thing?
Yeah. Essentially, it's like under the hood, it's Chat GPT, right? So we're using
Mhm.
OpenAI, and we actually are running our own local LLM, but that's just in like test beta mode right now. We don't want to degrade the experience for anyone, and we're running a vector database just for like supercharging the queries and getting the most relevant data back and stuff. But essentially, um, it came out of this idea like, what if a therapist was aware of my entire journaling history? You know, like they
Mm.
just understood my brain the way I do. So we don't use the word therapy because we don't want to get into any weird, stuff like that. But like the prompts that we're using to generate feedback are like, in light of cognitive behavioral therapy, how would you respond
Yeah.
knowing what you know about this person's journal entries? Like
I'm
that.
actually really interested in this because I don't know if it can already do this, but maybe this is a feature request. So I've been a really long time user of Day One app.
Okay, yeah, cool.
Um, uh, and it's basically like my business journal. Like that's where I go to just like brain dump business strategy questions that I'm just trying to think through. So I need to write them down. I I probably have 10 years plus of business chatter just dumping into there.
Totally.
Um, if I could just like click, like integrate that into this, and it has like my whole like the last 10 years of history of all that stuff, and kind of building forward from there. That would be
Totally. Yeah.
super
I mean,
interesting.
I don't want to give those guys ideas. They're really stellar team. But that's one of my biggest fears is like, what if day one just incorporates this as a feature, like, um,
I mean,
so
I feel like it's the kind of thing that like all of them are either already doing
yeah,
or they
exactly.
will. But it's cool that but like honestly, when I see these big established apps sort of like bolt on the AI button, like the thing in
Yeah.
Notion is like
Like bolt
I
on
never
AI.
use it. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
all right, you're just trying to capitalize on the trend, but like something like this that's like born out of AI, it makes a lot of sense, from day one.
Yeah. One of the principles sort of behind it that I think is a differentiator is that I really want Stilo to inject external wisdom into my journal experience.
Mm,
Not It's not so much about reflecting on my own brain as it is like we inject quotes from famous people.
mm,
Like Marcus Aurelius said, blah blah blah. You might find that relates to what you're journaling about, or like in this book, The Pursuit of Happiness, he talks about X, Y, and Z. And I find that really just makes the journaling more engaging.
mm.
I personally want like outside feedback rather than just like reflecting on my own issues over and over, if that makes sense.
Yeah, super cool, man. I can't wait to try it out. Um, So yeah, Shawn, this has been really insightful. I mean, I want to keep following along with everything that you're doing, and what you've built with Input Logic is super impressive. So thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Brian. This was awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right.